I want to talk about the media's part on election night. We all remember back in 2000, the networks had called Florida for Al Gore. There's always a worry now about that. And I think this year more than ever, because of all the mail-in votes and the different court decisions, there's a lot of worry that we may not know election night who the winner is. There's talk of social media platforms not allowing people to declare victory before certain outlets declare the winner. How do you, what do you advise for people on election night in terms of how the media handles this?
Well, I certainly have memories, not all of them fond memories, of election night when it was Gore versus Bush. With that very much in mind, I do think that what people need to keep thinking about this time on the last day of voting, number one, we should call it the last day of voting. It may or may not actually be election night. And by changing the words, we can change the way we think of it. So when we get to Tuesday night, don't view it as, quote, election night. View it as the last day of voting night. We may have a decision that night. I'll be surprised, but it's possible we'll have a decision. We'll know who's won and who's lost before midnight of the last day of voting. I think that's unlikely. It may take hours into the next day. It may take several days. It could take weeks. So this is why each and every one of us, after we voted, we need to vote. We need to get other people to vote. Then when we get home, nearly everybody's going to want to watch election returns. What we should have in mind are two words: patience and hope. That almost every religion in one way or the other teaches that among the most important things in turbulent times, when there's turbulence about, is patience and hope. Well, here's a case, whether you're religious or not, think patience and think hope. Patience, that it may take a while to know who's won and who's lost, and hope that when we finally get a decision, however that decision comes, hope that we can all be big enough to accept the verdict of the electorate, do our best for reconciliation, and move on. When you talk about the 2000 election, Gore versus Bush, and the fact that it is a fact that I think every major network called the election for Al Gore, or gave a very strong indication that he probably was winning the election. And then by the wee hours of the morning, it turned around and it was called for then Bush. And then, of course, there were long days in which we were trying to sort this out. It was finally decided by the Supreme Court. To put that in context, what happened in 2000, keep in mind that each of the network news call desk, the people who make the decisions whether the network should say X is won and Y is lost, in every case, at every network, and this includes Fox, there's some very experienced people on the so-called decision desk. And in the case of CBS News, when I was there, the network had an incredible record for not making wrong calls. It was, over the years, CBS News had called more than over 3,000 different races, including presidential races. It had been wrong, that is, it had to withdraw and pull back, I think 3, an infinitesimal number. So there was great confidence in the system that CBS News had, and there was a companion to this at ABC and NBC. And it was an overconfidence. And that caused to call Florida too early. For those who weren't alive at the time of the 2000 election or had forgotten, that's what happened. I don't think you'll have that overconfidence this year. If anything, I expect the networks to be much slower to call than they may be saying to themselves, we could call this and we probably should call this, but you know what? We're going to hold back and be extra cautious. I think if you follow this Texas journalism talk, it'll be a situation where the network people who are responsible for making the decisions on what a race is called, they'll have an attitude of, you trust your mother, but you cut the cards, which is to say, they'll be extra, extra careful.